is in our Constitution is for with these people in Guantanamo. And so just to set up this little piece of sound, there's two parts of it. One is, the first part is Abdullah describing when he was broken and made to confess that he was a terrorist. He's in a room, he's watching someone else being tortured and then being spoken to by a guard. And then he sort of explains to me who in fact he is. So.
And one of them was threatened to be raped, and they took off his pants. And it was like, I was like thinking, what am I going to do? They took me at night. There was two interrogators. They wanted me to say that I was a terrorist. I told them no, I'm not, and everything. Then they started like pushing me and everything. And then they brought a cigarette. The interrogator was smoking. He blew the smoke on my face. Then he came very close, very close to my face, and brought the cigarette between my eyes. And he said, I swear to God, I'm going to put it in your forehead if you don't tell me what I want to hear. I thought about it. I said, I felt like this is a jungle, and only the strong live in it. But still there is a small creatures that can live, but not by facing the lions or facing big animals, no, but by maybe hiding or changing their colors as the trees. So I just told him, what do you want me to say? You should say that you are a terrorist. You want me to say I'm a terrorist? Are you going to let me go? Are you going to let me go sleep? Because they wake torture, like not keeping me sleep. They keep me awake all the time. So I told them, okay, I'm going to tell you whatever you want. Yeah, I'm a terrorist, and go tell your bosses. And they left me.
This is not how he thought things would go with the Americans. In fact, back when he was being held in a Pakistan jail, when he found out that Americans would be taking them, he was relieved. He told the other prisoners it was good news. He knew America. He knew how the people were.
And I did so many places like Europe and England and Germany and France. But the difference was in the States. Everywhere you go, they welcome you. Like when you go in the supermarket, everybody goes like, how you doing, and everything. That's the thing that was in my mind. I was like, kid, oh, everything's gonna be fine. They're gonna understand.
So how did he know so much about American supermarkets? Well, in 1984, he came to America for the World Cup finals. In fact, Abdullah's been here a lot. He's been downhill skiing in the Midwest. He attended Old Dominion University in Virginia for a while, and has taken other trips too.
And in '96, I was in Disneyland, Orlando. For spring break, I was in Daytona Beach with some of my friends.
You were in Daytona Beach for spring break?
Yeah, it was year 2000. Bikers Week. I remember the guys, young guys, standing by the sidewalk, having the signs for the cars, for passing.
Right.
Some expressions written in it and show us.
Oh, sure. Oh, right. Oh,
yeah,
yes. That expression, the show us your...
Yeah, that expression. That's what I remember about that.
Bader, Zaman Bader. He was the editor of a magazine, kind of like The Onion. It was a parody magazine. In fact, he was making fun. At that point, Bill Clinton, this is 1988, had put the first bounty on the head of bin Laden. And Bader, as a joke, put Clinton on the cover of his magazine with the comparable bounty in Afghani money, $25 million versus the Afghani money, so it was about $10.50. And it had a whole riff in there about how you could always find Bill Clinton near the interns and so on. Anyway, we picked him up and held him for 4 years and interrogated him about that cover story. He went through over 200 interrogations before we let him go. And when I talked to Badr, this is when I suddenly realized that something was very different about these detainees. He was not arrested in Afghanistan on a battlefield. He was arrested in his living room in Pakistan. He'd been turned in by somebody. And this is one of the things that I find so amazing about the detainee and everybody involved in this war on terror. That these detainees in Guantanamo were, quote, picked up on the battlefield. That's the phrase they like to use. In fact, Scalia just said it the other day in anger to some of the court decisions that have been taking place. That these are dangerous people, they were picked up on the battlefield. Well, they really weren't picked up on the battlefield. Very few of them were. A place to have a sandwich, and when someone found out he was not a Pakistani and knew that at the time Americans were paying for people purported to be Al-Qaeda, the guy seized him and locked him in a back room. And that's how he wound up in Guantanamo. By the way, Badr wound up in Guantanamo because one of the people he parodied, the Taliban guy, turned him in and said he was Al-Qaeda. Then later on, that guy got turned in by somebody and showed up at Guantanamo, and Badr told everybody how that guy had got him in. And so that guy was in like several doghouses all at once. But what's curious about this battlefield of ours is that, and this was news to me, and I still feel like in all of this discussion about picking people up off the battlefield, we don't hear this enough. According to one study, a 2004 study, about 5 were Al-Qaeda operatives and picked up by us. Almost 7% were picked up by us. 5% were probably Al-Qaeda, definitely Al-Qaeda. The rest we bought with bounties. We introduced market forces into the collection of enemy combatants. We had this completely distorted pool of people that we were picking up. Moreover, ever since 1949 with the Geneva Conventions, we used to do this thing on the battlefield. It's called an Article 5 tribunal. And believe it or not, even in the heat of battle, we would try to winnow out real POWs from just civilians that got picked up in the sweep. And so, for example, in the first Gulf War, on the battlefield, we swept up 982 Iraqis in 1991 in one sweep. After Article 5 hearings, 750 of them were released. And when I talked to a couple of JAG officers, they told me that this was a fairly common sort of percentage. 3/4 or so are usually sent back home. But in this case, we didn't send anybody home. Not only did we put everybody in camp, but we then distorted that by dropping these leaflets out of planes, offering $5,000 bounties for commanders of Al-Qaeda. We're dropping these leaflets to people who make $300 a year, some of these farmers. So a lot of petty grievances got solved by running to the local American officer and turning in your neighbor whose farm you might have wanted, right? And so what we have in Guantanamo really is a detention camp built for Osama bin Laden, for the worst of the worst, as President Bush always says. And what we fed into it were, not all of them, but many of them were farmers, shepherds, and cab drivers. And you know, the clues to this were sort of available to be understood almost from the beginning. One of the first chief interrogator at Guantanamo was a guy named Michael Dunleavy. And in 2002, he was already complaining publicly about how the Army was sending him, quote, Mickey Mouse prisoners. And then in 2004, we had another study. In 2006, you had the Seton Hall study. And then, I don't know if y'all are reading the McClatchy News Service this week, but they're doing a 5-part series on Guantanamo, and they finally sort of followed up on what we did in this program. They traveled abroad to 11 countries and interviewed 66 former detainees, and came up with roughly the same percentages of people who were actual Al-Qaeda operatives. So now here we are 6 years later, and we're hearing about habeas corpus petitions. And part of what I know my colleagues can talk about much better is that because we never cleared that battlefield, we've never allowed any of these people to make the mildest claim that they accidentally got picked up on. And we now know that many of them were. And so this decision most recently, I don't know if you followed the reaction to it, but Newt Gingrich said that as a result of this decision, we will probably lose a city because lawyers like David are going to help get these people out, and they are going to blow up one of our cities. He said it was the worst decision, worse than Dred Scott. And John McCain has said he thinks it's one of the worst decisions ever in the history of the United States court. So at this point, we have to ask ourselves, are they saying these things because they really think it's the worst decision in the world, or because at this point we just sort of want to run out the clock on a really embarrassing situation in Guantanamo and hope that someone else will come along and fix it? So that's the question now as to whether we should be granting the detainees habeas corpus, and I'll let David now explain why.